it's a common agreement that everyone agrees probably that, for example, like a typical Brazilian coffee appear to be less acidic than of a Kenyan coffee, right? But if you look at the numbers, the amount of organic alphates in Brazil is much higher than Kenya. So it's the perceived acidity, right? So it's the numbers are not going to tell you anything on their own. It's just like how you what's the corresponding of those numbers to actual tasting.
Have you been thinking about starting a coffee side hustle? Our brand new Start a Coffee Side Hustle Mastermind Group is launching this August. A 3-month online program designed for new or upcoming coffee business owners anywhere in the world. You'll define your business fundamentals, shape your business blueprint, and learn how to navigate the coffee industry in 2025 small scale, including how to use tools like ChatGPT for smarter planning. It's a grounded, guided way to get started with the support of people who have done it many, many times before. Apply now at mapperforward.coffee/group coaching. Check the show notes for details. Welcome to the Mapper Forward Middle East podcast, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 1 of a brand new 5-part series, which is going to be a little spicy, folks. This is a series with Reza Kosar from Slick Coffee Co. in Muscat, Oman. Reza, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thanks, Lee. It's a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is all mine. This series has happened because I have been watching Reza post a bunch of stuff for quite some time now. And for anyone who's ever curious, I'm quite the person that does that. Like, I watch to see what people are saying, and then I wait to see when I think there's something that they're saying that's interesting that could be a whole series. That's when I reach out to them and say, hey, come, do you want to have a conversation about it on the podcast? And so Reza is somebody who typically doesn't speak out a whole lot about a bunch of stuff, but did speak out, and I went, now's my chance. And so Reza, welcome. This is going to be a great conversation, especially because of what the series is about. And the series is about what is quality in the coffee industry. No doubt this series will also air on the Global Podcast. So if you are listening to this on the Global Podcast, this is originally aired on the Middle East Podcast. You should go and check out everything that airs on the Middle East Podcast because it's really very interesting. Reza, we are in this episode talking about what are the tools we use in coffee to assess quality. Before we talk about that, people who may not know who you are, and there's nobody in the Middle East who doesn't know who you are, there may be some people in the global, just a few people in the global industry that might not know who you are. So why don't you tell people what you do and how we arrived at a point where this is a focus that you have in your career? Because folks, just to give you some context, if you don't know Reza, everybody in the coffee industry should know Reza. I was shocked when he and I had a preliminary conversation. I was shocked about the amount of experience that this man has in coffee. And pretty much all of life, he's had a fantastical journey. But Reza, why don't you tell people about your experience in coffee?
Thanks, Lee. It's very kind of you. Well, my name is Reza. I'm from Iran, but I'm based in Muscat, Oman, where I co-founded Slick Coffee Co. I wear a few hats in the coffee world. I'm a legacy curator and educator, as well as an international judge for a couple of excellence and world coffee events for roasting and brewers. And I think what really got us to talk about was when I spoke about competitions and right of people of just getting there. It's the difficult path for some people, especially from specific part of the world that are sanctioned. But there are a whole other things that we talked about, our previous discussion. So I think the interesting one is quality. It's a really fascinating kind of the buzzword we use among many other things we use in our industry. that we kind of like understand each other, what we talk
Yeah.
about, but probably everyone has their own kind of like perception around it and understanding around it.
Folks, we struggled to pick a topic, just to be very clear.
Right.
We had to talk for hours to arrive at what the subject was going to be, because the thing that Reza had said on his social media that really captured my attention was that him being from Iran, it's such a struggle for people from Iran to participate when they win the national championship on the international level. And this is a huge problem. One of the very many problems I have with competitions is that people who are investing so much money and so much time, it's an endeavor that they can be judges, they can be in specific countries only. There are places that they're not allowed to compete or participate as judges or competitors. And that just doesn't seem fair. It seems like it automatically disqualifies people who very much have the potential to be world champions.
Right.
And that is unfair as a starting point. And my argument about that is, why are you participating if you know that there's no chance that they will let you get there? But that's not what we're going to talk about. And I bring that up to say, we went from that, we talked about, opening businesses, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. And we arrived at quality because this is the one we could probably argue about the most. So I hope you're going to enjoy whatever this conversation is going to take us, because it's not going to be anywhere that is boring, I can guarantee you that. So Reza, you wear many hats in the industry, and we have recently experienced a shift in the tools that are being used in the industry to kind of position the conversation of quality. And so what are the tools that we as an industry are using across the supply chain to kind of talk about coffee?
Right. Well, depending on what we refer to when talking about coffee, there are various tools that we use to understand and assess the quality or state of the product we are analyzing, being like parchment coffee, green coffee, roasted coffee. There are many things that we call coffee in general, but depending on what you refer to, there are different tools from different meters, like moisture meters, color meters, density, water activity, pH, refractometers, all that mainly for physical attributes. And then, of course, we have the cupping protocols and the standardized forms by CQI, SCA, and Cup of Excellence to kind of help us describe, quantify, and communicate our perceptions. And if you go deeper into research and lab analysis, there are advanced lab tools for chemical analysis like GCMS, gas chromatographer mass spectrometer, or NMR, to map out the volatile compounds and the chemical fingerprints of the coffee. We are in many ways a very gadget-loving industry, aren't we?
Yeah, you got to wonder why we're happy to pay for gadgets, but not for coffee itself.
Yeah, so it's there. But I think we can keep that for the other topic.
We're going to talk about that in another subject, yes. But yeah.
Yeah. But it's really fascinating that we've built this like ecosystem of devices, meters, and forms, all in the pursuit of like understanding a cup of coffee more deeply.
And I guess there's one tool that we haven't talked about. There's the forms, right? And that seems to be, oh, maybe you did mention that actually, is the forms that,
I did mention that,
and that seems, I apologize, that seems to be the one that sort of everyone's being required to participate in. They can't be forced to do it, but it seems to be the one that everybody, no matter where they are in the supply chain, they are using these forms. Why are they so divisive?
Well, the one thing that I got to mention is that in addition to all the different tools and devices that we have also human subjects, or also tools and instruments that sensory science utilize, right? So in sensory evaluation, we have in the definition, it lies that this is for human, right? For
Right.
human, by human. It's going to be like
For human, by human. I love it.
so. It's when you have that, depending on what you are really like, what the question is, what the objective of your test is, you're going to select from the various types of like methodologies and tests that we have, and for each we have different setup and protocols, and depending on those, you can choose which type of form or test or like score sheet you want to collect data, basically. And everyone across the chain, or in any other industries as well, like in F&B, they have their own set of like forms, score sheets to analyze data.
You know, the thing about it that's very interesting to me, whether it's the gadgets, whether it's the forms, whether it's the information and education, when it comes to assessing quality, when we use any of these tools, the thing that has fascinated me the most is who gets to define what's right, which tools are right, and which tools are not right. How does that work?
That's a very interesting question, because
Here we go.
right. So, like, thinking about it, like from like our perspective, who are in the middle of it, right? Like using these tools and devices and all, it was just like we joined the movement. We didn't define it. We didn't set the rules. We're just playing by the rules. And especially like in coffee, all the way back from 1800s to when like we had more like systematic way to like analyze coffee. By the time like we had the Copper's Handbook by Ted Lingle, things had a starting point at some point in the history, right? So we just joined that movement, and it's a very relatively new
Yes.
science as well. Like the whole sensory science itself, it's a very new thing. So we as humans still trying to understand that, and it's not the whole truth. Like using this is what I really like try to keep in mind, that all these tools are not the whole truth or reality about coffee. They're just lenses, for better understanding, and basically like help us to collect data and see the patterns and put the reference points and benchmarks. So at the end of the day, like we in our industry, I think we are trying to bridge the gap between the hard science and the perception, the human factor, which is going to be really difficult and controversial, because again, everyone has their own kind of like, what is missing is the emotional and the cultural aspect is missing here. And when you think about it in a very like hard scientific and strict way of like looking at things, that they just see the numbers and like objectivity, it's basically what I call a trained subjectivity. So it's just like everyone comes around and everyone brings their own voices also to the room. It's not like we are in the void, right? So, and we try to use the data that we are collecting and all these like numbers and preferences and points to something that works for us as an industry. And we define it that way. So who gets to define it? It's a very like deep philosophical kind of like question, which is right, which is like, but it's complicated.
As complicated is, I think it's a fair question for us as an industry to start exploring.
Yeah,
Right? Because
definitely.
I've been in the industry in Australia, in America, in the UK for a little bit, and now here in the Middle East. And I can tell you that the rules that define how we should be using the tools, what are the right measurements, just acidity is a really interesting one when it comes to the question around quality, right? Because in our region, nobody likes acidity. The majority of people do not like acidity. Where I'm from, though, in Australia, it's all about acidity. The more acidity, the better. And I find that as a marker of quality as something that's very interesting. So if we're marking these tools benchmarked against the people, the organizations, the associations that are setting what the benchmarks of these tools should be, I'm not sure that we're having the right conversation. And we're going to explore that a lot through this discussion, I guess, because in the next episode, we're going to talk about how do we define quality. But when, like, a lot of the gadgets that you mentioned, I wonder who sets. I get it when we're taking a moisture reading from anything. We're checking to make sure that it is optimized, to make sure that there's not going to be any mold and it keeps the quality of the product. That to me is a hard measurement. That is like hard science. We know that at this, we get either this or we get this, right? Those kinds of readings make sense to me. Those kinds of tools make sense to me. When we are using forms that are subjective, that's a little more grey to me. Most of the tools that we have in the coffee industry to measure quality, are they more the hard science or are they more the subjective side of things?
Well, I must say, to me, the way it works is a mixture of like, it's a hybrid kind of system. So, just like typically, we're not going to get any sort of like information if you just merely look at the numbers in anything. So it doesn't really make sense to anyone. Like, for example, like people go around and talk about like their roast profiles in terms of like development time ratio or like, the how much percent of this was in Maillard phase, and also these are just numbers that make sense to you, right? So you come to the like more sensible kind of like conclusion when you kind of like say, okay, this is my, let's say, end temperature equals these tasting notes that I have from my cupping report. Then it turns into something more meaningful, more sensible, and more actionable kind of result. So based on that, you can go back and check if anything goes wrong. So that's why we have, for example, like QA and QC in the hard science, right? So it's a mixture of both worlds that makes sense,
right? And I guess if
a number is not going to tell us like anything. Like, for example, like the example you mentioned about acidity, like we all know, like it's a common agreement that everyone agrees probably that, for example, like a typical Brazilian coffee appeared to be less acidic than of a Kenyan coffee, right? But if you look at the numbers, the amount of organic alphates in Brazil is much higher than Kenya. So it's the perceived acidity, right? So it's the numbers are not going to tell you anything on their own. It's just like how you what's the corresponding of those numbers to actual tasting.
And do we as an industry technically understand
This is where
all of
education
this
comes
stuff?
in. So this is something that is really important that the people when they are taking classes and reading about this stuff, like, get to this point, because this is where things make sense, get to make sense. You know, it's a very complicated thing, coffee itself, like trying to understand it. There are too many variables involved, right? So it's really difficult to pinpoint that this is the cause.
Right. If I understand what you've said, as we wrap up this episode, I want to summarize something that I had new thought. I've never had it before, so thank you. I appreciate that. And the thought is that where we're assessing coffee quality, the tools that we're using, these cupping forms, really are supposed to be a summary of all the quality things that have been done along the way to get to the end result. And there are, at all of those different stages that have gotten to the point where we're cupping a coffee, there are gadgets and tools that can be used to help change the quality. And those gadgets and tools are used at individual specific positions in the value chain or supply chain. But at the end of it, there's this cupping form that's supposed to give us an insight into where we've ended up at, right?
Well, kind of, but still, it's not the whole story. It's not the whole reality.
No.
Because, like, we cannot really, like, narrow it down to see it just as the final score, let's say.
Not necessarily the score, but I can
Not
cup a
necessarily
coffee
that.
and I can say that I'm tasting X, Y, and Z, or like when we're assessing that in a form, we're really not. If the score's the only thing that you're taking away from it, it doesn't matter what form you're using, you're not using it correctly. If that's all you're looking for is the score, you've missed the point of cupping,
Exactly.
right?
Because that's not the point, yeah.
That's not the point. But that form should give me an insight to what happened at origin. What, as a cupper, I should be able to taste what the green's doing. I should be able to taste and assess the quality of the coffee that's roasted. I should be able to taste for all of the things that I want to be able to taste for. And if something has gone wrong, I should be able to see that in this tool that is the form, correct?
Right. But even for that, it's best to use different types of forms depending on what you are assessing. There is no one form, answered all the questions you have. This is the basics of the sensory science.
Okay. Having said that, we're going to go into the next episode. And in the next episode, we're going to have a juicy discussion about how do we define quality. And folks, you don't want to miss this. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. This episode is part of a 5-part series produced by Mapper Forward. Check the full playlist and guest details in the show notes, as well as how you can support our work in the coffee industry. Become a premium YouTube subscriber, explore our Patreon and any brands we've partnered with to bring you this podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us grow our audience.